Hello everybody and welcome to part 4 of my tutorial series for Europa Universalis IV. In the last episode we have began to commence war against the Emirate of Granada. I will try to tell you guys, or rather instruct you guys, on how to properly conduct war in this episode and make peace with your enemies. We are also going to touch upon the topics of vassalization and the topics of mainly how to manage co-belligerence in a war. So if you guys remember from last episode in part 3, we have declared war on the Emirate of Granada after we have gotten 3 claims upon their provinces, the provinces of Jamal Tabrik, Granada, and Maria, respectively. Of course, in the last episode, we have just briefly occupied the province of Maria quite rapidly, I should say. And you'll notice that when you take a province in Europa Universalis, it will be kind of outlined in this yellow dash that you see here. Well, it won't always be yellow. For example, if you're playing as Castile or Spain, your nation's colors are yellow, therefore the stripe will be yellow. But say you're playing as France, whose color is blue. If you occupy a province, it will be in blue. Just like how in France currently is at warfare, or in war with Genoa, and Genoa is occupying a French province, and their color is also yellow. So that's relatively self-explanatory. Again, to remind my viewers, if you press Y, which opens up the diplomatic map mode, you can see that every province that you have a claim upon, you can declare war to enforce your claim. So our current conflict, I've actually shown since the last episode, is we took the mission to finish the Reconquista, which will give us some rewards, assuming that we take all 3 provinces. It will give us some nice morale for 10 years and some manpower recovery speed as well, so that's nice. Right, so let's go ahead and continue where we left off to kind of clear up some confusion that has arisen since the last episode. Basically, if you're attacking any province that has a fort present within the province, of course, Granada being the capital, generally the capitals will contain a fort unless otherwise specified. Granada contains a castle, which is a fort level of +2, I believe is rank 1 castle, as we have over here in Toledo as well. Basically, each level of fort will make it progressively more and more difficult to capture a province. For example, the province that we are currently capturing has a fort level of +2, which means that I believe we need at least 4, because you multiply it by 2, you need 4 regiments, or rather 4,000 men, to be able to capture this at minimum. But keep in mind that the more units you have on a province, the faster you will be able to engage in siege tactics, such as driving the defenders into attrition. So I'm going to explain exactly how the siege mechanics work in this game in this episode. So basically, you'll keep in mind that this unit over here was a unit that we used to attack into Granada in the last episode. So basically, this unit right here is engaging in blockading the enemy fort, and instead of being in a prolonged battle, we are mainly just laying siege to the settlement and basically bleeding and starving out the defenders into submission. Just like we have done in Maria and like we are about to do in Jabal Tariq. I have opted to gain some reinforcements to gain in on to help out our siege over here. As you can see, our unit that is being led by a really terrible heir of the throne, Enrique de Trastamara, is about to join up with the non-led army that is currently laying siege to Granada. Basically, to move your units, you just have to right-click on any province, as I've said in the previous episode. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's also go ahead and engage in some diplomacy while we are at war. It would be incredibly beneficial for us to potentially increase relations with a faction that is currently our rival, to see if we can become friends with them later on. Of course, Navarra, we don't need to improve our relations with anymore, so we're going to go ahead and unpause the game. And let's go ahead and use our free diplomat to, I don't know, potentially fabricate a claim on England. That might be useful. Let's go ahead and do that really fast. So you guys will notice that I've won a battle, and I should have kept up the battle screen, because every time you win a battle in Europa Universalis, when you're at war with a belligerent nation, you gain not only prestige, which we gained, I think it was like 0.13 or 0.14, but you also gain something that's called Army Tradition. Now, Army Tradition can be found in your Military tab, the shortcut of 0 by default. And army tradition is incredibly important. Each year that you are at peace, or really that you are no longer fighting in a war or no longer engaging your men into military action, you're going to lose army tradition over time. And army tradition basically entails two very large things. It entails the fighting capabilities of your army, so it improves your morale, it improves your siege ability, and it improves the manpower and morale recovery speed of your units. But more importantly, it also basically predicts how well your generals are as soon as you recruit them. Now, keep in mind, we do have a very decent general, a 2-2-3, that is currently in our employ. I'm going to do something incredibly stupid just for tutorial purposes, and I'm going to go ahead and sack him so we have a free general. Now, I'm about to hire a new general, and you'll see that with a army tradition of 10, we are about to get an incredibly bad general. Now, if you guys will remember from our first and second episode, kings and queens scale from 0 to 6 with their administrative, diplomatic, and military power. Now, this is the same for generals. Generally, before I go ahead and recruit the general, if you have an army tradition of anywhere between 0 and 30, you're going to have pretty bad generals. If you have an army tradition between, let's say, I don't know, 40 and 60, you're going to have pretty decent generals. And anything above 60, you're going to have like some god-tier Bonaparte generals. They're really, really good. So, as you guys can see, we have a low army tradition. So, let's go ahead and hire a general, which I'll show you guys how to do. You simply highlight one of your armies that is either in your own territory, that is one of your cores, or in a province that you are currently occupying, such as Maria, as we have occupied this city and province. So, again, select your army, and you click on the name of the leader. Sometimes you won't have a leader, like over here it says no leader, but you can't choose a leader because the unit is in enemy territory. As I've said before, you have to be in friendly territory or at least in occupied territory. So Enrique, we are going to relieve you with a new general. Now keep in mind, hiring a general, just like hiring a conquistador, costs 50 military power. Now I won't get into the differences between conquistadors and generals until we start talking about colonization, but for the time being, all you need to know is that recruiting a general will cost 50 military mana, as we've discussed in the previous last two episodes, how mana works and how you gain it. So let's go ahead and hire a new general by clicking on this button right here. It'll cost 50 mana, and you'll see that our general has a skill of 1 in firing, a skill of 3 in shock, and a skill in 3 in maneuver, and a siege skill of 0. So honestly, he's quite a bit better than what you would expect with an army tradition of 10, but he's still pretty mediocre. He's definitely better than, say, our heir, who's complete garbage. But keep in mind, we want to kill off our heir in combat, so we're going to keep him at the helm of our command, even though Odon Nunez de Balboa is much better. So we're going to talk a little bit about the fire and shock phase of each combat once we get into some combat with another army. But basically what you guys need to know is that the firing phase is the main phase of attack when you are attacking the army each day that you have basically an attack phase, followed by a shock phase. And shock phase is generally utilized by your cavalry. Shock comes directly after your fire phase. There's two phases of combat, firing phase and shock phase. So basically, your general's skill is added on to your unit's combat ability, meaning that whenever you're in combat with an enemy army, the skill of your general is directly proportional, usually, to how well you will do in the battle. That is to say that if you have a good general at the helm of your units and you attack, say, another army that is equal, or rather equivalent to your army in the same army composition and relatively same numbers, 10,000 men versus 10,000 men, for example. If you have a good general, 10 times out of 10, well, 9 times out of 10, usually, you will win the fight against an army that has either a bad general or no general at all. It is always imperative that you guys lead your units with a general, whether that be a king or an heir to the throne. This is very, very crucial. And if this is not for tutorial purposes, if I was actually fighting for real and Granada wasn't such a pushover, we would definitely use our better leader to lead our men into combat. But as it stands, this is just a tutorial on how to hire generals. Now, keep in mind that you can only have as many generals as you are allowed to hire. You can only support one leader at the start of the game. However, rulers and their heirs do not count towards this cap. If we were to, say, hire another general, we would lose 1 military power per each leader that we are over the limit. As you guys can see in the bottom of the military power, it says 1 out of 1 leaders. Well, if we were 2 out of 1 leaders, we would have a -1 hit to military power each month, thus decreasing our monthly increase from +6 military mana to +5 mana. So it's important that you stay within your supported leader limit. So with that being said, let's go ahead and continue. The game. Gonna go ahead and kind of fast forward to speed 4 here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about siege phases. So as you guys will notice, we are going to merge our units together. Remember, how to do this is you select your units by clicking over a box over them and either pressing G or clicking the merge selected unit button. Now this will form the army with the heir at the head of the battle. Of course, whoever is leading one of your armies, if you merge with an army that does not have a leader, automatically the leader will lead the merged army. So let's go ahead and talk about kind of manpower and reinforcements here, now that we see that our units are not fully healed up. So you will notice if we go into the army overview menu, you will see that we have some units that are depleted, and these units will continue to reinforce over time until they have 1,000 apiece for each regiment, as each regiment is 1,000 units. So say a regiment that is at less than 500, this one over here is 395, it's going to cost us 0.08 ducats per month to basically replenish this unit. And remember, replenishing the units does not come from money alone. It does impact your income, however, but it moreover impacts your manpower. So remember I was saying that manpower is the most important indicator on your user interface. Well, it still is, definitely, without a doubt, the most important user interface feature that you have in Europa Universalis. So you'll notice that we lack 2,500, well, almost 2,500 men in our army that we've lost due to war and due to sieging these provinces. Well, basically, you will notice that we have a manpower of 24,590, and we are losing 2,441 men. However, that being said, we are close to our supply lines, being in a province directly adjacent to our cores. As you'll notice, we have cores on Cordoba, Jaén, and Sevilla. So basically, this means that our units will replenish faster because they are an adjacent province to our cores. Now, if they were actually within our core, like if they were actually within Cordoba, Toledo, or Jaén, or Bandoja, it would be much faster for them to replenish their manpower. But because they are close enough, their manpower will regain, albeit very slowly. So you'll notice, if I go ahead and unpause the game really fast, you'll notice that next month, you'll see that we need 3,391 men, and now it's much less because our men have relatively replenished. So you'll notice we have taken control of Jabal Tariq because it did not have a fort. Generally, when you attack a province that is adjacent to a fort or completely lacks a fort in any immediate vicinity, it is incredibly easy to take control of because there is no effective garrison defending the fort. So basically what this means is that instead of siege phases like we see over here in Granada, the capital, there is no siege phase. In fact, there is only one siege phase, and it's basically always guaranteed 100% chance for you to conquer it. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and pull back this unit over to Toledo. It is our ruler, and he's not as shitty as Enrique. We want Enrique to die in the siege if at all possible, so we're going to make sure that he is on his way to dying as fast as he can. And we're going to unpause the game, and this will show us the siege phases. So keep in mind this number over here next to our unit when he's sieging. You'll notice that the castles are still intact, the walls have not been breached, which means that it's going to take some time before the defenders inside decide to desert or just die due to malnutrition and starvation. So basically, what's going to happen here is that if the walls were to fall anytime soon, that is to say that we would breach any walls, we can mount an attack, but this would be incredibly costly. So we are going to always avoid mounting an attack unless if it's absolutely necessary. For example, if we are in a pinch for time, if we need to, take a province very quickly, we will always assault the fortress. But it's very important that you don't assault fortresses if you don't have to, because you will lose thousands of men, which are immediately deducted from your manpower reserves. So remember, manpower is incredibly important, so it's nice to preserve it. So that being said, we're going to take the fortress by attrition, so let's go ahead and pause. You'll notice that, well, this is another, little little flavor event that pops up, we're going to choose to gain admin power, as that's quite important. And you'll notice that instead of negative 63%, now we have a negative 56% chance of taking the castle because they have experienced a supply shortage. Now, each siege phase, it looks like there are rebels that popped up. Now, normally this does not usually happen. This is just due to the virtue of the fact that the people within Granada are a bit upset at their ruler. They were pretender rebels that were trying to overthrow the government. Normally this doesn't happen. But as you guys can notice, because this time we actually do have the battle screen up in front of us, each time you win or lose a battle, you will gain army tradition. And normally you would gain prestige if you were up against another nation, but we were up against rebels, so we don't get any prestige. But this will give us army tradition, which is what I was talking about earlier. Each fight increases your army tradition, thus increasing your morale and your capability of fighting in the future. So always keep your tradition up as high as possible. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that another way to increase your army tradition is to keep your forts active. Notice that we have 2 forts within our country. They cost approximately 2 ducats per month to maintain. We can always mothball our forts, meaning that we keep them at half capacity in their garrison, but this is not advisable due to the fact that it cuts back on our army tradition and it also leaves us more vulnerable to attack. So we're going to keep our forts currently manned, which increases our manpower. And I just wanted to show you guys that this increases our army tradition when we win a battle. But for some reason, your army tradition will increase even more if you lose a battle. That is right, you heard me correctly. If you lose a battle, your army tradition will skyrocket. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's how it works. So we lost a lot of men through that fight over there, so we need 6,503 men to replenish our manpower, which will dip our manpower down below 20,000. So again, each month, your manpower is calculated. Each month, your income is calculated in your treasury. And also, not every month that the siege phases do not follow months. The siege phases follow basically, they're proportional to the amount of men that are within the garrison of the province that you're trying to take. So, for example, we are going up against a fort, a level 1 fort, which means that it's going to be relatively quicker to take this province than it would be a level 2 fort. So it seems to me that it's approximately 1 month, 1 month and a half for each siege phase. So you'll notice that when it says status quo, that means that there was no supply shortage, which means that basically nothing has changed. The men inside the fort are still able to fight. They still have food. They still have water. We want it to give them a supply shortage or a disease outbreak. As you can see, if you mouse over the percentage chance, negative 56, you'll see that there is a 50% chance each siege phase for a supply shortage and a 7% chance for a disease outbreak. We want either a disease outbreak or a supply shortage, like so. We got a supply shortage, which means that we have a chance for a food shortage next. So keep an eye on this. Basically, the more men you have, the more effective your sieges are, and we haven't really gotten into unit composition. I will talk more about that in the next episode, but basically once you research in your technology artillery, such as cannons and cannonballs, this will increase your ability to siege provinces, and it will make your siege phases last much shorter. So we have a border friction, which means that we have an ally that we have provinces which we have a rightful claim on. So what we're going to do is we're going to lose diplomatic power because we do not want to lose Portugal as our ally. So yes, it is true, we do have claims on our ally of Portugal, but it's for a good reason. We are going to eventually take out Portugal once they are no longer useful for us, which will be in the distant future. Not like immediately, but in the future. Of course, as you guys can see, each month our manpower is going down as we are reinforcing the men that we've lost. And of course, as you guys can notice, each province does have a supply limit, but we are currently above the supply limit with our ally, who is also reinforcing our units. So we are going to lose men due to attrition as well. So as you guys can see, we have a negative 42% chance to take this province in the next siege phase, and all this number is basically okay, so we have a disease outbreak, which has decreased the willingness of the defenders to basically hold the fort, which is fantastic news. Now that we have a free diplomat, we are going to continue to fabricate claims upon England, such as their French possessions here in the southwest of France, to the immediate north of Navarra. So we're going to speed things up a little bit. Usually when you're at war, you want to speed things up if you are just dominating like we are. We have a negative 35% chance of taking it in this siege phase, but as you'll see, the more and more supply shortages and the more disease outbreaks and food shortages that are within the enemy fortress, the easier and easier and the quicker it will be for you to take the province for yourself. Now, what I haven't mentioned in this episode is war score. Now, we're going to go ahead and get into war score really fast, and I apologize if this episode bleeds into the next one just because we are about to run out of time as I'm keeping these approximately 20 minutes apiece. But in the bottom right of your screen, you'll see that we have the Castilian conquest of Granada. Whenever you declare war on an enemy, you'll notice that you have a screen much like this that shows the co-belligerents on each side of the conflict. So, for example, we are Castile, and our ally of Navarre have joined us. So, basically, our combined armies of both our nation and Navarre exceed 26,000 infantry, 8,000 cavalry, and quite a large navy, whereas their side fields only 9,000 infantry, 5,000 cavalry, and a very negligible navy. And if I were to press Y, for example, you see that my country is in green, my allies are in blue, and my enemies are in red. And this is very useful because generally if you are in a large war with, for example, 10 countries on each side and you don't know where they're coming from, perhaps they are attacking you from the New World, perhaps they're attacking you from Asia, it sometimes helps if you just press Y, select your country, and see what the diplomatic situation is. Now, I'm starting to ramble, so I do apologize. Let's go back to our war score screen. And when I refer to war score, all I refer to is the mixture of the amount of wins and defeats we have in battle coupled with our war goal. And since our war goal is to take Granada, and due to the fact that we have not taken Granada yet, our war score is going down due to the fact that we have an unenforced claim, meaning that because we have chosen to take Granada as our war goal in this conflict, if we do not actually obtain this province, if it is not occupied underneath our hegemony, it is going to result in us more than likely losing the war, as even if we have multiple provinces, it doesn't matter. We need to make sure that you always obtain the war goal. So in this case, it is to take Granada. And once we take Granada, we are going to shoot up in war score, which will allow us to not only make peace with the co-belligerent of Tunis and Jarid, but also finally annex Granada once and for all. So let's go ahead and close out of the war score screen. We'll get into that in a minute. And let's go ahead and continue with our conquest of Granada. As you will see, the past few siege phases have been highly successful. We have a 0% chance of taking it next turn, but that being said, we have a much higher chance of having water shortages and things like that. Now you'll see for the first time our percentage chance of taking the province has gone from the negative to the positive, and all this means is simply that now it is quite a bit easier to understand. We simply now have a 35% chance of taking, or rather occupying, the province within the next siege phase. You will see that we can, okay, no, we have not breached into the walls yet, but very soon, the amount of men in their garrison is going to decrease due to the fact of famine and water shortages and surrender's defeat. Of course, there's a 35% chance of surrender, and the surrender chance is reflected in the overview over here right next to our army. So we have a 35% chance of taking the province in the next siege phase, which has been reduced to 21%. Sometimes these integers kind of do weird things, but by and large, you just want to keep your eyes peeled to this this percent chance, as that is the governing factor of how likely it is for you to take the specific province. So we're going to continue to lay claim on Portuguese lands. We want to have a claim on every single one of their provinces. That's once we finally go to war with Portugal, we can take out much of their provinces. And we have a free diplomat over here. We're going to go ahead and continue to improve relations with Navarra, as once we are at peace, we might not have such a high relationship. As when you're at war against a common enemy, this increases your relations, which is quite nice. So our relations with France have expired, even though they are still our rival. We're going to go ahead and work on increasing relations with Austria. So let's go ahead and improve relations with them. It is always advisable to keep your diplomats busy, especially when you have diplomats that are not doing anything. So, for example, all of our diplomats currently are busy improving relations and fabricating claims, which is a good thing. And any time now, we will take the province of Granada. It's very, very slow progress, unfortunately, and our manpower has been bled into zero, unfortunately, as well, which means that we should probably go ahead and pull back some of our men. Let's go ahead and split our men into half. and take back our men to Toledo. This might reduce the chance of us taking the province. In fact, it didn't, which is good. So let's go ahead and make peace. Let's go ahead and take back our diplomat over here in Navarra. Send him back home. And let's see what we can do. We have a 32% war score, which means that we basically are, we've gotten the war goal, which means that we can gain 24.6 more war score by achieving it, which means that basically as long as we hold on to the province of Granada, or rather whenever we hold on to the target of the war goal when we are in war, if we take the province that we laid claim to, it's going to increase over time into eventually, I believe, reaching plus 30%, which is nice when you're in a war with a lot of different countries, because I'm going to explain to you why we are not at 100% due to the fact that we have control over all of the Grenadian provinces. Well, this is because Granada has a strong ally, the strong ally of Tunis, which is quite a big country, right? So don't fret. We're still at war with Tunis, that's true, but we've taken Granada out of the picture. They have a high war exhaustion, or rather a low war exhaustion, which means that they want to end the war, and their war exhaustion is basically increasing their national unrest. They're very upset about the fact that we are at war. We basically need to get Tunis out of the conflict, because as you can see, if we go to the peace treaty right now, or the peace table, I should say, we're not able to enforce acquiring all of their provinces due to the fact that they have other allies that are within the war. Now, don't fret. A very easy way for you to increase your war score over your enemies that are potentially co-belligerents, like in this case, where Tunis is still in the conflict, is just to simply send out, like I'm selecting my navy right now and right-clicking the Barbary Coast. If you send out a naval unit in an adjacent territory to a naval province that is in control of your enemy, you will automatically blockade this all of these provinces that are adjacent to the sea lane. So, for example, I'm in the Barbary Coast. I'm currently blockading the provinces of Annaba, Kabila, and Matija. But if I were to say blockade the capital of Tunis, or off of the Cape Bon, we would have a much higher war score, as we are currently blockading their capital. And we have an efficiency of 100% due to the fact that we have a very large navy. So now that we are blockading Tunis, we have a higher war score, but I still don't believe that we will have enough war score to enforce our demands, which means that we simply have to wait it out. And wait it out we shall, because we could gain 24.2 more war score over time. And generally speaking, if we blockade Tunis enough, they'll probably try to make peace with us anyways. So let's go ahead and use our other diplomat to increase relations with Austria while we sit back and really do basically nothing. We're just going to continue to fabricate claims on Portugal while increasing perhaps our relations with the Papal State, the Pope. We'll get into the Papal mechanics in the next episode, or the next few episodes, right? So 1 second. I apologize for that. Allergies are quite bad. Let's get back into the game. So again, each month our war score is going to go up. You'll notice that's 41%. It goes up by like 0.3 or 0.4 each month. So now it's 42%, as long as we hold on to the war goal of Granada. As soon as this province is lost to our nation, that being like what I mean by that is, like, for instance, if Tunis was able to mount an amphibious invasion into Granada and retake the province, we would lose all of our war score, so it's imperative that you hold on to the war goal. So that being said, their war exhaustion is still increasing every month due to the fact that their entire kingdom, country, is under foreign occupation. And now our manpower is starting to increase over time, now that we've fully replenished our armies. As you can see, it recovers incredibly slowly, unfortunately. But we want to increase our manpower reserves due to the fact that if we are in another conflict, just like so, we can use this manpower for to replenish our units. So as you guys will notice, we're going to go ahead and end the episode. But in the next episode, we're going to go ahead and conclude the war with Granada. I'm ending the episode now because Navarra, our faithful ally, is under attack from Aragon, which is a great time for me to show you guys how defensive wars work. They are, of course, allied with Brittany, Portugal, and Venice, and they have, of course, Naples underneath their personal union, so Naples will join in the battle as well. So this might be bad, because we are going to be in a relatively large war. with a relatively large amount of people. We're going to get into this in the next episode, so guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for the next one, where I show you guys how and when to make peace with your enemies. Of course, we can't quite yet make peace with Granada, but we will in the next episode, where we also rally in to help out our ally and future vassal of Navarra. So I'm going to go ahead and accept the call to arms, and I'm going to go ahead and end the episode here. Stay tuned for the next one, guys, and I hope you guys have learned something. And again, I will see you on the next episode. Take care.